Welcome to Ending the Stigma, a path to recovery. A mental health and addiction recovery podcast show. Okay, everybody, welcome back to Ending the Stigma, a path to recovery. I'm your host, Fredd Carroll, joined every week by my friend and birthday boy, Scott H. Silverman. Happy birthday, Scott.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
68, I believe.
Yeah, the common question is how does it feel to get older? And you know what? I don't know if I feel older. My prescription on my glasses changed by 4%. I don't know if that's normal or not, but I like to think it's good to have another birthday. That means I've celebrated another year on the planet.
Yep, another year of sobriety, another year on the planet. You have lived probably far further than you imagined 40 years ago.
I was happy. I was happy when I hit 30. That was my goal.
Isn't it amazing? And everybody goes through that. It's not just addicts, but even young kids think, young kids in certain, I won't say my daughter goes around thinking like that, but I know I did. I won't talk for other people. I'll say I did. I was like, the way I'm partying and having fun and living on the edge a little here and there, I'll be dead at 30 anyway. And I think I think that's contributed, even if it's subconsciously, it's contributed in my life to my inability to save money and stuff like that. I was never good with saving money. I live for today rather than tomorrow type. And I bet you subconsciously it's played a role.
Yeah, and I think young people, I don't think they think about their, invincibility or they think about it, but not vulnerability. They don't see sunsets. You know what I mean? They're kind of living more in the moment, it seems like, than planning for the future. But there are a lot of young people that are, they have their 401ks right out of college and they start their job and, putting away a little bit for tomorrow, a rainy days fund. And so I think that's admirable as well. But it'll be interesting to see 10, 15 years from now what people are seeing as, a way to have a priority.
Hold on, my daughter's bugging me. She doesn't know we're live on the air, and she's bugging me.
I know you were live.
What?
The bag of treats that were in here.
I don't see them. No. Probably threw them out. Do your kids ever, well, your kids are older now, but you remember when it didn't matter if you were on the phone or whatever you were doing, they would just come in and start asking you questions. You remember those days?
Yeah. But, they've always had really good, I grew up in a family business where we had really specific boundaries. And if somebody was on the phone, we always respected that. My wife comes in now where sometimes we're live. And even though I've told her, we're going to be live here, she'll walk in and go, just ask a question, more or less forgetting the fact that I mentioned to her. But, it is what it is. It's weird when it happens when, you're doing a live television show and the door gets open and the dogs come running in. But, during COVID, everyone's like, oh, it must be nice. It's so cool working from home, isn't it? Yeah, it sure is.
Did you ever see that video that went viral of he was a political guy or a finance guy? And his kid comes walking in, his baby, and then the nanny and all of the dogs. Oh, he's just losing his mind.
The nanny's trying to stay low so no one's going to see her, and she's grabbing the kids.
Yeah, they don't know. He probably said, I don't have a nanny. We take care of our own kids. And the nanny appears. But so me and you were just talking about what's that?
I was going to say the back half of that segment, he starts to kind of, reboot like nothing's gone on. He's like, and, he just like, that didn't just happen. That wasn't there. Yeah, I like that.
It happens so often. So we were just talking about this Euphoria show, which is a HBO Max show, I believe. And it gets great reviews. It's very well done. I don't judge things off of its, what it's about. It's how the quality that it's done. And we just had a off-camera conversation with my daughter, my 21-year-old, about it because she is a fan of the show. So me and you both don't watch it. You don't watch it, and I don't watch it. Correct?
No, I've done a little research with the trailer and read a little bit about it because I've been asked questions. But no, I have not watched the series.
Yeah, I haven't either. I probably watched a few and stuff. So it is a very intense in the drug usage thing. And we had asked my daughter just now, you and myself, about whether or not how she views it. Is it a positive or a negative? Is it making kids think positive towards using the word positive and negative is tough because it's almost the opposite in this instance. Is it is it having a negative impact where kids are going, oh my God, look at their life, they're having a great time, I'm going to try this? Or is there an influence of, ooh, I don't want to live that life? And she went with the former, where she believed as long as you weren't triggered by it from a past addiction, that's the only way. Like, she doesn't look at it and say, I'm going to go and do some drugs now because they're living a good life. So,
yeah. Well, you and I have talked a lot about high profile people with huge platforms, people who have a huge social media presence, who have, done things and people want to be like them. We've seen how that can really turn things upside down, and how it's glamorized by high profile people, sports people in the entertainment world, celebrities, and people, people want to be like those people. So when they do it and they say, oh, this is okay, or their actions in an acting profile, intimates that, this is something we do all the time, or it looks like they do it all the time, and it's actually harmful. It's a little scary because people do tend to gloss over reality and decide to make that decision that, it's okay for them. It might be okay for me.
Well, I do think in the instance of music and movies that the reality far outweighs the unrealistic. And what I mean by that is, just because a song is about something, like I listen to a lot of hard rock and heavy metal, it doesn't make me want to go out, and they could be singing about murder or something like that. It doesn't make me want to go. It's just a song. But I do think that the artist involved in those things have more power than the song. So, for instance, if this actress in Euphoria, who's very popular right now, I can't even think of her name, but I know she dates Spider-Man and she's in the Spider-Man movies. If she came out, which I think she probably does, because she's a young girl and they're all involved in these mental health and addiction things. And if she came out, I think that would have a more positive message than the show would have a negative message. Do you agree with that?
I think so. And I, harken back to the day, you remember when gaming was so influential with young people and these, shoot 'em up games. And then when these school shootings started, they were really pointing, and even some of the kids that were involved or knew the person said, oh yeah, they were really into, I can't remember the name of some of the games, where, you find different weapons along your trail and you use those weapons to take other people's lives. And that's how you get elevated, gamification, and you get to the next level and get more points and you become more skilled. So, I think we've had a lot of that, and, I call them outside influencers, but they tend to have, really, some people grab a hold of that and then all of a sudden they think they're in a scene and they're acting out. And, those are just scary things. I mean, it's interesting, California now, the governor is going to do here with guns what I think Texas did with, abortion, and try to make it, some very strong laws and have consequences. If you use a gun, go to prison, kind of a thing, which we technically already had. And, we're seeing this level of violence. You and I've talked about this for almost a year, and it's starting to really escalate. And there was something going on in New York yesterday. I heard on the news today down the subway, and I think it was people that just were mentally off the rails, acting out. I don't know what the details were, but, we've seen some murders and shootings in New York, and they're across the country. And it is just kind of what we forecasted, unfortunately, with what's going on. And, what's interesting now is, COVID's starting to kind of, we're turning the corner, so to speak, but we're still talking about it. And I think it's important to do that. But I think we need to start shifting gears and really focus, as a country, on the behavioral health issues, mental health issues, anxiety, anxiousness. But I just saw this poll, was it 17% were not satisfied with the way the country's being run, but personally, we're very happy. which is interesting. 85% said that they were personally happy, but only 17% approved that the country was being run or done the way it was supposed to be.
Yeah, maybe we're starting to not, as a unit, not believe in politics in general at this point.
Well, when you see the infighting, it's just the level of maturity is like, it's out of control. They can't even agree on what day of the week it is. Yeah, and they can't even agree what the weather looks like. And they can't even agree with, and I'm not making a political statement. It's just as human beings, for God's sakes, get your stuff together and start working together or we stop looking to the legislative leadership as an arm of, stewardship, because it's really, and it should be, and it could be, but it's scary because, we've always kind of leaned on the government to say what we think we need to hear, want to hear. And now nobody knows who to trust or how to trust. So they're kind of doing their own thing without skill sets or tools because they haven't for so long.
And I honestly, I'm in that. I don't even watch the news anymore. In the mornings that I'm off, I do tend to put on ABC. I'm a bigger fan of Good Morning America than the other ones, but I don't believe anything they tell me anymore, especially like this Russian-Ukraine stuff. It sounds so ridiculous that this is even discussed. I don't know why all this is out in the public, why they have to release it to the media. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. It sounds like nonsense. It sounds like people forget that the Ukraine is, and this is far off topic from mental health, I guess, but listen, there's mental health issues in Ukraine, I'm sure, due to this now. But it's a thriving country, Ukraine. It's not some war-torn desert. It's not Afghanistan. It's not dealing with those types of places. This is they have airports, they have restaurants, they have beaches, they have everything. This is not, it's the second largest country in Europe, I believe. With next to Russia. So it just makes no sense that they're in the news. They're going to attack. They're not. How about we stop assuming and wait until we have the fact? So there's no fact. The minute they say we think, everybody's assuming. So now I'm forced to say, well, I don't know. Am I going left? Am I going right? Am I going left? And I don't even know why we're involved. I don't understand what this has to do with us beyond being a good neighbor or a good support system. I don't understand why we get involved in all the world's problems. We know the answer is money. The answer is oil and money. And that's the biggest answer on the end. Boy, this is going to be angry. Let's be an angry show. We're going to start.
And I don't disagree with you. I mean, I don't understand what is the incentive to be at war? I mean, to your point about power and money, and after you have money and power, what's left? I don't get it either. I mean, every single minute that on the major networks now, the cable networks, that's all they talk about is, we're going to war. No one's really, gone, but they're getting ready. But what is it? I don't understand it, because the threat of that seems to, after 2 weeks of hearing it, it's almost like, come on, get it going, get it over with. But it frustrates me that you're right. The media keeps talking about it as if we all need to pack a bag and get our go bags ready to go and be prepared to go somewhere, a bunker or, neighbor's house, or dig a hole and hide.
So I have without revealing too much, I have an Army connection. Okay. So I have somebody that has information to a point, that's active. So they say, how that Afghanistan thing kind of went awry with the way they went about it. So now with this Ukraine thing, they're trying to get it right. According to this person, they're trying to get it right by utilizing the original plan they had for Afghanistan. They're trying to use it in the Ukraine. He says the problem is just what I said before, is they're two different types of nations. If a U.S. soldier is going down the streets of Ukraine yelling, get to the airport, get in a plane, telling the Americans that are there, they'll be like holding their coffee, their Starbucks coffee, going, what do you mean? I'll just take a Delta flight and go. They're a thriving nation. They're not it's not Afghanistan where ISIS is coming in and taking over. this is something they deal with all the time with the Russians, the Ukrainians. They're kind of used to it at this point, even the Ukraine president. But he says...
So what's different right now with Putin and what's going on? Because he seems like a major puppeteer. So what's taking place, do you think, that's different now? Is it a global power, struggle? Is it Putin wanting more? He seems to have a lot. Why he needs more? And it's interesting that because everything I've heard and read about if a war takes place as a country, we're going to get more issues in our country that'll be a reflection of what's going on there. So I don't understand what the upside is of this and what the goal is and the intent. I'm confused by it.
I don't get it either. All I know is it has to do with being wintertime. It plays a large role in this because they supply 50% of the gas to the European countries, Germany especially, and stuff like that. And if they cut off gas supplies to those countries, so they're trying to use it as a power, saying, listen, you want your gas, agree with us for this NATO stuff. They don't want Ukraine joining NATO, but, well, we're a little off topic, but it's nice to be off topic. Let's get back to some addiction issues and mental health issues, because I will tell you this, from a standpoint of mental health, and this stuff plays a role also, because that same person I'm talking about has a mother, for instance, and that mother is now not mentally prepared because she has no idea what's going on. Where is her child? Where is her son? So these are things that happen too. And he's not the only one over there. There's thousands of soldiers. So that's thousands of parents who now have an extra burden on their mind because, as a parent, you worry about your kid, whether they're 15, 5, or 50. You just do. You worry about them. So, and when they're put into a war situation, or at least a protection or a presence overseas, you worry about it because you don't have contact anymore. So there's so many problems in this world. We need to solve one at a time. I just don't know why we keep solving, we're throwing little tiny darts at little problems and just putting little tiny brush fires out instead of the raging fire. That's what we do. We put the little brush fire out to satisfy a neighborhood, to satisfy a city or a town, but nobody goes big picture anymore. Nobody could, just like politics, nobody could agree on a solution. Nobody bands together and says, okay, there's millions of us. We all want this. This is what we want. And believe me, it would happen because you're the voters. The politicians will join with the voters if the voters are that big of a mass.
Well, they can't be politicians without voters, right?
Well, you also don't have I don't even know what it would be. I wasn't alive in the Martin Luther King era, but you don't have people like that anymore. I can't think of anybody that's leading behind, not a politician I'm sure they're out there, but I don't know of any as big as like a Martin Luther King with his movement, or Malcolm X did it, and all these guys that were moving for the African-American community. Where's that guy now? Where's that one person that's people are gonna believe in? And I don't know.
Well, what was the basketball game? Was that yesterday when the assistant coach or something hit the other coach in the face? And one of the taglines was, trained professional leaders shouldn't put their hands on other trained professional leaders and act out that way. So, and that kind of thing, it's probably already gone viral. I've seen some of it, but those kind of things, clearly, unmanaged anger, if you will, or untreated trauma, what drives a coach, knowing the cameras are everywhere, the players are there. Clearly, he must have snapped and wanted to just act out.
Well, he claims, I know a lot about this. I was just reading an article because the suspension just came down. He was suspended 5 games. And his name's Juwan Howard. He's a former NBA player and a Michigan player. Very good career. He didn't have a lot of problems in his career. A few competition. That's the problem. The competition level, a Michigan is a pro level type college stuff. It's a big job. His biggest thing, for people that aren't aware of this, was a timeout was called with 15 seconds left when the team was up 15 points, the other team. And he didn't like that they called timeout. The problem with his theory is Michigan was doing a full court press. Why were they in full court press if they were ready to just run the clock out? They shouldn't have been in full court press. That's why the guy called the timeout. So both of them are wrong in this situation. They shook hands, which is what they're supposed to do. But Juwan Howard supposedly whispered, "I won't forget this." And the guy put his hands on Juwan Howard. And if Juwan Howard is anything like me, because I'm like that, the minute I'm touched, I do not like it. I do not like my space being, it's one of my tics, I guess, or something. I don't like when people talk to me and have to touch my shoulder or something. I don't like it. It's not I don't know if it's a flaw or a protective thing, but regardless, it's my space. I don't like it. So supposedly that assistant coach he took the swing at made a remark. Now, nobody's ever going to know what that remark was, but we could probably guess it could go from one level to the worst levels. And, I had made a comment that he's supposed to be a role model, but somebody reminded me that just because he could shoot a basketball in his career doesn't make him a role model. So they hired him for the wrong reasons, I guess, because of his fame. It's all about recruitment, but listen, he should be, I don't know if he should lose his job. I don't know if that's a solution where it's kind of like locking up an addict, Why are we going to punish the guy? Why don't we help the guy? Locking him up isn't the solution. It's solving the mental health that's involved with the addict. But for him to make one little mistake, it's not like he hit a kid. First of all, that has happened. And that was with many, many years ago, and it was a huge coach. I can't even think of his name, but he punched a opponent, but one of the kids, and he was fired immediately. So right. At least it was a coach that he was aiming for, not a kid.
What was that movie? Where you called Anger Management? And remember, there was one of the psychiatrists was a big comedian, and I can't remember his name now.
Wasn't it Billy Crystal? And
yeah, Billy Crystal, right. And who was the star that was the guy that had to go to anger man? He was a mafia leader or something. It was pretty funny. He was a court-appointed anger management class he had to go to or something.
And listen, the pressure, Juwan Howard's under a lot of pressure already. Michigan was supposed to be good. Now, all these are just bad excuses, but they're still human excuses. This is how we react. Somewhere in his life, this was his reaction to somebody putting their hands on him and making a comment. Both of them are guilty. They all could have walked away. They had already shaken hands. They didn't have to continue the conversation. They could have walked off the court and could have been in the media like this. But that's the world we live in, and that's how volatile and dangerous it can become in a flash, in a second. Because somebody could have seriously got hurt. Even somebody in the crowd. It could have been one of the players' mothers could have been sitting that close. And
you go to swing at somebody and you duck and you hit somebody else and they fall, hit their head and die. That's involuntary manslaughter. It happens.
Are you familiar with this photographer from the Super Bowl parade? Did you read about this?
No.
A photographer was taking pictures of Matthew Stafford, and it went viral. She went to take a picture, and she made a misstep, and she fell. She actually broke her back, okay? She fell very bad. It was a very bad fall. Well, Matthew Stafford was half in the bag. He was drinking in the parade and stuff. He went viral for turning away instead of helping her, okay? He's the quarterback. But his wife did lean down and try to help her. And all this came out in the news and stuff. So Matthew Stafford came out and said, I will pay for this woman's medical bills. I wasn't in my right mind at that moment. He did the right thing, I think. Well, then this is when the internet tears you to pieces because people have too much time on their hands. They went through this poor woman's social media. Well, I won't call her a poor woman because it might be all true, and revealed her as a racist. They found stuff from her Twitter account years ago of racism and stuff. And now this woman's lying in a bed with a broken back and being labeled a racist, all because of this, just trying to take a few pictures. So life could be cruel sometimes. Life could be. And she may be a racist.
As you're talking, you remember a couple of years ago, there was a marathon and some guy went by, he was running and he hit a reporter on the butt, and that thing went viral, and he got in some real trouble. And he first blew it off and said, "Oh, I was just joking," but he crossed the line, and she reacted the way anyone would. She felt violated. So and look, we all have. You hear me say it all the time, pressure bust pipes. We have times when things happen, but there's no room to be able to say, I'm sorry, if you're capable of doing that and making amends and moving forward, because you're right. Somebody sees it from a different angle and they want to go after something, and they do. And that's what's going on. It's almost like you're better off not leaving the house, because was going to happen out there. And, if you're going out socially, I mean, I was out the other day for just running some errands, and I was amazed at how uncomfortable I felt with people, with their behavior and the lack of eye contact. Masks are still being worn here. And it was just like, this is really not fun being here right now. And, the signs all say, we need help, or please be nice to the helper here, because at least they're here. And I don't know if we're making excuses for behavior, but it's almost like we've gotten to a point where we've crossed over, and it not that we want to get back, but we've crossed over, and it's supposed to be not okay, but you have to tolerate it because it is what it is. And that to me just is going to snowball. I call it the barking dog syndrome. I bark, you bark. There's another person in the room. They're going to start barking, and then I'll start barking again because I heard the second or third dog start barking. Our dogs do it. They call it the barking dog syndrome. One goes, the next one goes, and all of a sudden the third one's barking because the other two were. They didn't even know why. Yeah,
and it is I don't know what's going to happen, but we're about to go maskless. I mean, I'm maskless all the time now. I am, I've got my shots and all that, and I bring my mask still. It's still in my pocket, depending, because you don't know where you're going. Sometimes I go to a Walgreens and they ask you to have, if everybody has it on it, I tend to put mine on, even though I don't have to. I don't want to be the one oddball out, because it doesn't bother me all that much. At work, we're not doing it anymore. Work has become an issue because of finding workers, what they're doing now. And I don't know how they're surviving, but I have hired 15 people in the last 3 months, and not one of them ever started. Even though 15 people were hired, given background checks, which cost money, given drug tests, and were offered the job. 5 of the 15 showed up for the orientation. 2 of the 5 that showed up came the second day, and I have 1 left out of those 15, but he's training on the computer system, and he's been doing it for 9 days. It should take him 3. Okay? Now we pay them to train, but he may never start. So all I could think of is happening is in my state, which is Connecticut, they are getting hired. They're using me to go to their unemployment office and say, I looked here, I applied here, I applied here, I applied here.
Oh, so it's to renew some of their benefits.
Right. And there's no system in place for me to send a notification to the state of Connecticut to say, we offered the job to such and such. We offered the job to such and such. There's no system here like that. We're a very antiquated system, very good system. We pay a lot of money and we pay a lot of people, but I cannot find anyone to work. So much so that I've been forced to shut down on Saturdays because I can't find one single person to work Saturday overnights.
California, we don't have those kind of problems. We just have things like, it was a year and a half ago, they found out that something like $2 billion of unemployment insurance were given to people that were actively incarcerated.
Yeah. Well, we have a local town
we
here.
Have little problems like that, where our state government, for some reason, was, because there was so much money coming down the pike from the feds, and and the quicker you pass it out, the quicker you could get your reserves built back up, and now all of a sudden that money's kind of run out, and I assume people are going to go back. But San Diego, we still have 30% of our businesses that closed that will not be opening. Not reopening. It just won't, just because of, they were too small, or the leases have been broken, or, they found another way to survive. But I don't know how they're doing it. It's just amazing. I mean,
a lot of the problem I'm seeing now is landlords suffered so much because they took away their income stream. Now they're to the new lease and they're pricing it out. They're pricing that business out of the business. So the restaurant can't be there anymore. There's a restaurant in Chicago. Guy's been there something like 50 years, but the landlord raised the rent 4 times and he can't afford it. So he's leaving and he's shutting down.
And are there new or different businesses that can go in there and pay that new rate? I mean, I can't believe that a replacement business is coming in with more reserves and extra cash. So that's kind of goofy. You may have
No, you can't. The answer is no, but someone like your wife would probably be able to answer that better from a real estate standpoint, that even if they can't fill it, they could still list it and then sell it with a rate saying this is how much money it could make. So if they're going from $400 to $1,600, to say that, instead of saying you could make $1,200 off this place every month, now you can make $3,600 off this, but it increases the value of the property by raising.
Because that's commercial. And I got to tell you, there's places all over San Francisco, Los Angeles, Sacramento, LA, San Diego. I mean, prime real estate that where normally foot traffic, if tourism were up, would be a good place to be and put your wares, goods, or services out there. But it's not really happening like it used to. So, because tourism's down, disposable income's down, and most people aren't going out to eat and spending, $175 for 2 people unless they have the disposable income. So I don't know how they're replacing that, because with that many people, being out of work, but we have the same hiring issue as any other part of the country does. People aren't showing up, aren't going to work. And I don't know how they're surviving, because rents are up, cost of living's up. My God, gasoline, I just spent, I don't want to tell you what I spent to load my car. It was north of $100 for gas. And, it's close to $5.25 for a gallon of gasoline. And this is before all the stuff going on with, Russia and Ukraine. If that war takes place, we could be looking at $7 for a gallon of gas.
Yeah. And we're still, Connecticut, we're about $3.75 a gallon, which is still a lot of money. It's a lot of money. I don't know how these kids do it, these younger kids, for the same reason kids don't smoke cigarettes, especially here. I know in some states it's different, but Connecticut did a smart thing a lot of years ago. They taxed the hell out of cigarettes. In other words, a pack of cigarettes in New York and Connecticut is about $12. Kids can't afford to smoke. They can't even afford it. I remember as a smoker, I was paying, when I first started smoking in the 80s, I was probably paying about under $2, $1.80 a pack, something like that, and you probably go back even further to, you were.
I almost remember 45 cents a gallon for gasoline, almost. And it was less for like 25 cents back in the day.
Gas has never bothered me too much. I've always had, but I do see where it could get him, especially business-wise. People that deliver and stuff like that. It's got to be through the roof. But
we don't have mass transit here, Fred. So for us, it's a real burden because everyone has to be in a car. It's not like you can get on your bike and ride 15 miles to work and 15 miles back. You could, but the roads aren't really set up. Freeways are obviously you can't ride on them. So we have to have a car here to move more than 8 or 9 miles. So it's an issue in California because of all the freeways.
So last week you mentioned your daughter moving to New York City. And did she eliminate her car? Did she?
Yes.
No car?
It's funny because the month that her lease was up, her sister took it over because her sister's lease was up. So that really worked out. So she took over the lease for the next 2 years and did all the paperwork. So she's got the car now. So it really worked out well. But no, keeping a car in New York, oh my God, what for? I mean, you'd have to be making a lot of money just to store it somewhere. And then, of course, driving around, when you're working every day, you really only get out on weekends.
And you don't need it. You don't need it in New York. I mean, the system is flawless. I mean, there's issues, and they have a lot of.
Well, a lot of big cities have that, and in Boston, Chicago. I don't know. We have, my wife and I both have a car, and we need it, and we couldn't carpool because we're going in different directions all the time.
I have heard LA has upgraded significantly in their trains and stuff like that.
Yeah, but I don't think more than 17% of the population are really using mass transit in LA. Just because, unless your job is within, a stone's throw, or your career path, or your family, because if you have to go from one part of LA to the other, it's really hard to do with public transportation. So yeah, a percentage use it, and they put some trains in going out east and bringing people into the city. And I think, San Diego, we've spent tens of millions on bike lanes. And now that we have all these bike lanes, we have more people dying in bike lanes we've ever had before. And merchants don't have parking out in front of their businesses. I mean, it's like every day there's a new fight about something that was supposed to be a good thing to do.
Right. So, and I could see where it's a good, positive thing, but if it's not done by the right people or thought out well, because there's always a con to everything. Whether it's a park or a baseball field, or you're going to have a pro and a con.
Oh, sure.
What happened? Was it in San Diego that person tore up your baseball field? Was that in San Diego? I think it was. Somebody broke
tore up?
Yeah, somebody drove their car and was able to get into your baseball field where the Padres play and tore up the outfield.
The field?
With their car. I think so. I think it was San Diego.
I must have missed that one. That was
a check into that. So what else is, before we end this and stuff, I think this has been an interesting show from that standpoint that we just kind of talked about life rather than a specific. And just remember, a lot of this is our opinions. It's just two guys talking. So people don't think that neither of us are trained in all this political stuff. We hear the same stuff too.
We're clearly not experts. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, I know I'm not. I'm not going to say you're not. You're an expert in what you do with your addiction recovery and stuff.
Oh, sure.
Tell me what's going on in your world recently, and what do you got planned for the future? Are you going to get out of the house now? Are you getting out more?
Well, I've actually made some major shifts with my virtual ability, and I do almost all my meetings, interviews. No one's really in my industry. We're focused on more telehealth, and we're working on this statewide initiative. I'll tell you more about it in the latter part of March, April, depending upon how things go. We're doing some research around it, and that's to just make it easier for people to get access to behavioral health and mental health and treatment, substance abuse disorders, SUDs. And, my big beef right now is I want to be talking more about this counterfeit medication. I think I shared with you last week, and I'll say it again, because another article came out. One of the DAs in California says 80% of the street drugs in California, 80% contain some level of fentanyl. So I'm pushing the fentanyl test strips and trying to get Narcan, everywhere we can. And it's like, it's falling on a lot of deaf ears, unfortunately. So I stand ready to make myself available whenever possible, and firing off emails to all the appropriate, I call potential change agents. So I'm trying to be less aggressive with my campaign, but stay passionate and enthusiastic.
I would assume the one thing that hasn't changed in the world today is people still look at addicts as less human.
the stigma is still there.
The stigma is still there where you're saying it's falling on deaf ears. It's falling on deaf ears because it hasn't happened to them yet. It's amazing how when it happens to a politician's son, it's all over the news. It becomes a support system all of a sudden because he's looking for the votes, the pity votes. And he's like, oh, we didn't recognize poor Sethi's issue. And now we're going to fight for this and this. If you vote for me again, we'll put until it happens to them. And unfortunately, they're not being honest because we have spoken that, isn't it 85% of the world is affected one way or another by somebody with an addiction. So they've all dealt with it. They're just afraid to look at it and they're afraid to lose votes. They're afraid of their votes. They're not going to have their job. And that's what they're fighting for. So they don't care about the addict right now. And the thing, no, you're absolutely right. And the thing is this, at some point they're going to have to, because it's not getting any better. I mean, just pointing to the homeless issue in our community, it's doubled over the last 2 years. Okay. And we still have 50% of the homeless in California. So, and everyone's talking about what are we going to do? How are we going to fix it? How do we get them, help? And we're still, I did an interview about it was questioned about the safe injection sites that are going on. Is that really helpful? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And, when the White House came up with $31 million to do these safe pipe smoking kits, and that controversy about, why would you buy somebody a crack pipe, which was not the intent. But, and I'm more hung up on the $31 million. I mean, $31 million, when you think that Biden was just in Ohio and he gave them $1 billion for infrastructure. Well, if half the population dies, they're not going to be able to drive on roads that are rebuilt. So to me, we've got things kind of not priorities screwed up, but some of the things are upside down. To your point, if 15% are addicted and 85% are impacted by them negatively each day, we should be talking about that more than we're talking about COVID. And it doesn't matter which way it goes. And, I feel bad for people who have lost their life around it. And then what was it? Was it Canada? I just did an interview with a Canadian station with that issue with the masks, the mask mandates and the fighting that's going on, that people don't want to wear them. They think it's bad. And then the school board members are trying to get more people in position of membership to vote against things like the mask mandates. It's insane, the time that we're spending on something that, in my opinion, I'm not sure how it adds value, not only to the children, but to the families and to the community. So I just want to focus on what adds value and what creates a better quality of life. And, if the tool saves a life, use the tool, like, fentanyl test strips, for God's sakes, and make it available to anybody who wants it, just like we did. I'm so glad I don't have a child at a school age. I don't know how I'd deal with it or how I'd view it, but I'll tell you what, I don't blame people for getting mad now when they turn on the Super Bowl and nobody has masks on. Nobody. All those people that are the same people, the LeBron James and all those people that are crying about this, that, and this, and then they'll say, well, we were tested. Okay, well, what if we tested a whole classroom of kids? Shouldn't they be able to do the same thing and stuff? And we got to be, they got an excuse for everything. And I don't see the angle. All I see is a bunch of pissed off parents. And it's not that don't believe in the science or not. It's the back and forth. None of it makes any sense anymore. I don't see the value one way or the other. And that's why
trauma. That trauma of that fighting, that trauma of that fighting, that it's going to create PTSD and it's going to create walls and divisions, and it's going to remove the camaraderie. And then kids are going to start doing what their parents do because they're forced to take a position. Then we got more people fighting about stuff that doesn't make any sense. It's kind of like, you remember when gluten-free became so important? It's almost like, if you were at a restaurant, and you had gluten in your food, someone would come over and slap you. What are you doing? It's like secondhand smoke. You remember secondhand smoke when that was such a big deal, when science said, hey, that person smoking that cigarette, that smoke that gets in your face, or your neighbor, who's blowing smoke through the air conditioning or heating system, and it comes in your apartment, everyone said, well, that's their right to smoke. Well, wait, but what they're doing is killing other people. Is that a right?
Yeah, there's consequence. People have to remember the consequence to every right that they have, and there are plenty of rights, but I think it's fine. I'm growing very compassionate to people's opinions differing from mine. I'm not as argumentative as I used to be. I kind of let a live and let live type, and I'm learning to control what I have control of.
That syndrome's called AGE. That's what it is.
Yeah, well, it is. It's maturity. There's age that goes into it, and there's maturity. But I see it in my daughter also, though. I see it in younger kids. I wouldn't trade places with my daughter versus me growing. This is a tough world to grow up in, with videos always running. You can't be yourself and stuff like that, because I know if you had the videos of you at 21 available to YouTube right now, you would not be very happy, about who you were then and stuff. And it's not,
my buddy, one of my oldest friends and I were getting together yesterday for my birthday. We were talking about, when we turned 18, neither one of us could remember what we were doing when we turned 18. No, and look, and what I was, but you know what? And I was on the road under the influence. So I was potentially driving a 2-ton metal weapon under the influence. No, you're right. If people saw what I used to do, but I think in my work, it gives me some credibility to better understand how to help. But I don't judge others because I was in that for a long time. But I use that as a tool today to hopefully, build some trust with, younger people when they're in crisis. Well, and a lot of them are.
Before we go, you want to drop your phone number on people?
No, they're not calling me, Fred. So,
it's okay. Drop it anyway.
I know. 619-993-2738. I dare you to call me. 619-993-2738. Scott H. Silverman, yourcrisiscoach.com. Call or text me anytime. And if something's going on that I can help with, let me know. And if I can't help you, Fred and I will find someone who can.
Yeah, we'll do our best. And we're going to hopefully I get some guests. I showed you that new planner that I have where people could just click on it and join. Nobody's really been on it yet, but so every week I'm trying to grow us one step, even if it's a baby step. I'm trying not to go backwards at all. And part of it is upgrading my studio. Part of it is being more consistent, having better video quality and all those things. And I think we're doing well. And we'll get there. But the best way for us to get there is those people out there to help share, tell people about us, and share our videos, share our podcast, which is available on Apple and Spotify, among others. And that's the best you can do. You could go to venomstudios.com. That's venomstudios.com to find anything on me or to connect with me. You can find me on social media, find Scott on social media. Just connect with us. Ask us questions. You want us to talk about something, we'll talk about it. So that's going to be it for Ending the Stigma, A Path to Recovery with Scott H. Silverman and Fredd Carroll. And if no one has told you they love you today, we love you. We'll talk to you again next week. Goodbye. Ending the Stigma, A Path to Recovery is produced by Venom Studios. Copyright 2022 by Venom Podcast Studios. The show is hosted by life coach and author Scott H. Silverman and author Fredd Carroll. Our intention is to reduce all stigmas and to provide information that isn't discussed enough. If you or someone you know has an issue, please contact your local authorities or substance abuse counseling centers for help. The suicide hotline could be reached by dialing 1-800-273-8255 or simply text the word HOME to 741-741 for free 24/7 counseling. Scott H. Silverman's information could be found by visiting his website at yourcrisiscoach.com. And to learn more about author Fredd Carroll, please visit www.venomstudios.com. That's studios with a Z. And remember, if no one has told you they love you today, we love you. This has been Ending the Stigma.